biologist acknowledges he needs no archaeologist, a smart apologist. He sees all hearts, omnipresent cardiologist, master of logic, cosmic novelist. Following any other god is just preposterous. Yeah, say lie. Let's just let that sink in for a second. Think about that. Yeah, I know it's deep, but when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and 100%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. The hypostatic union. I know it's deep, but when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and man, 200%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the percent, yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. The hypostatic union. I know it's deep, but when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and man, 200%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. Yeah. The Son of God, 100% divinity. Yeah, self-existent second person of the Trinity. Magisterial, imperial at the helm. Infinitely transcending this material realm. Yeah, he's so original. Getting to know him is pivotal. Behold the invincible, prototypical, holy principle. Yeah, divine attributes, the omnis, wisdom, grace, beauty, love, wrath, and truth. He's the one that all creation was made through. And by him, the earth's foundation was laid too. As the angels, they saw it on pay-per-view. Created Satan too. Matter of fact, created you. And nothing can escape Jesus' sovereign rule, from the farthest galaxy to the smallest molecule. So who deserves to gain fame? Who? By the word of his power, the universe is maintained. In other words, put the cosmos back on the shelf. Without Christ, reality would collapse on itself. Yeah, Jesus, the marvelous author of all consciousness, beyond what the sharpest biologist acknowledges. He needs no archaeologist, a smart apologist. He sees all hearts, omnipresent cardiologist, master of all cosmic novelist. Following any other god is just preposterous. Yeah, say lie. Let's just let that sink in for a second. Think about that. Yeah, I know it's deep, but when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and man, 200%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. The hypostatic union. I know it's deep, but when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and man, 200%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. Yeah. The Son of Man, 100% humanity. Yeah, the mind stretches to understand how can it be. You gotta see what he does, becoming what he was. It will never ceasing to be what he was. Is your mind flipping? That got you tripping, me too. But the scripture is true. Philippians 2. By faith we believe this amazing Jesus, who made Uranus and Venus, became a fetus. It's such a secret that few, if anybody, knew it. Months later, he's covered in amniotic fluid. The subject of the Gospels, praise of apostles, armed with eye sockets, armpits, and nostrils. Who is this Jesus? God clothed in human weakness, super sweetness and peace for the true believers. See the one who never tires, knocked out sleeping. See the source of eternal joy weeping. Which one can explain how the sun abundant with fame, who made thunder and rain, now has hunger pains? See the creator of water become thirsty on the cross when he saves from the slaughter the unworthy. My heart should be sky high, and I ought to just cry wide with water in my eyes when the author of life dies. Raised on the third, God, man, soul seeker, the hypostatic union, it gets no deeper. I know it's deeper when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and man, 200%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. The hypostatic union. I know it's deeper when you peep, you find the steps. Yeah, Jesus both God and man, 200%. Yeah, fully divine, fully human. Introducing the hypostatic union. Yeah, that's how we do it, man. Lyrical theology. Word up. Spiritual analogies. The hypostatic union. Shout out to my man Direct. Yeah, good luck, y'all. What up, Canada? Yeah.
The hypostatic union. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And the reason why I played that is because we are going to talk a little bit. We'll probably continue into next week, but Jake has a word. But we're going to talk a little bit afterwards about differences between Catholicism and Protestantism. Where the main point, I'm not talking about particularly about which one's better today. I'm talking about understanding something before you refute it. You have to understand where the other is coming from before you're able to refute something. So a lot of people don't particularly understand And I'm going to keep this short, but for instance, they will. A Mormon will talk about something, and then we don't exactly know what they're talking about, but we want to refute them and tell them the gospel. Um, but at the same time, a Muslim will come and tell us, "Well, you worship three gods," and then we go, "No, you don't have it right. It's called the Trinity. It's not three gods. It's three in one, and you don't understand." So we have to understand where the other side is coming from in order to do proper apologetics. You can't just go and blast people.
Exactly.
Right. So, but you go ahead into what you were. I think it was devotion you were talking about.
I've been thinking about this lately, and I love this whole idea of it's John chapter 21, maybe about verse 20 through 23 is like the area where you'll find it. And I love this idea of just keeping it simple and following Jesus. And what's happening here is this is after Jesus has resurrected. And it's such a beautiful moment where it's just after Jesus comes and it's describing how Jesus came and showed them his hands and his side. And then he says to them, "Peace be unto you." And he just gives this blessing, and he's resurrected from the dead. And it's so glorious. And but his disciples are still here. We're still there in the flesh. And John, the beloved disciple, we see that so many times the human nature wanted to warp Jesus's ideas.
Yeah.
Like when Jesus was in that town and they said, "Should we bring fire on these people?"
Yeah.
Or when Peter was in the mountain and Peter's like, "Let's set up tabernacles and worship."
Misunderstanding his character.
Misunderstanding the character. And here again, we're all like Peter. We've all got these human characteristics. And Peter's misunderstanding what Jesus is saying and the ideas. And he's talking about John, and says, okay, because John was the beloved disciple, and they thought he was like a mystical character. And Peter says, King James Version, chapter 21, verse 21. Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, "Lord, what shall this man do?" Verse 22 now. Jesus saith unto him, "If I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me." And that's like trying to worry about what's going on in the world, worrying about everything. And Jesus is just saying, don't worry about the left, don't worry about the right.
Let's focus.
Just follow me. Because they were thinking that John was so connected to Jesus that he wouldn't die until Jesus returned. However, they came to that conclusion. That's what they thought. And Jesus said, "Listen, I created everything. If I want John to live to 1001 until I return, he will.
Yeah.
And if I come back tomorrow, forget about it. Doesn't matter. Follow me," is what he's saying to Peter. I could see him taking Peter, follow me. Just follow me, Peter.
Yeah.
Just like when Peter was in the water, he said he was walking to Jesus, and he got nervous. He saw whatever, thunder, a wave, a fish underneath, and he got nervous and he fell. He wasn't focusing. He wasn't following literally Jesus's footsteps.
Right.
And that so many things now. Who know? Like this is the same idea. People speculating the end times you're being Peter.
Yeah.
You're being Peter. Jesus, is John gonna live to 1001? You're being Peter.
Yeah,
Stop it.
Good point.
Stop thinking about the end times.
Is it 7 years? Is it?
Is it this? Is it that? Is he gonna come back in the September 22nd? Whatever. No. Stop. Follow Jesus. If you're following Jesus, it literally does not matter when he comes back.
He comes back, you're ready.
He comes back, you're ready, because Paul says, whether we live or we die, all that we do unto the Lord.
Yeah.
So when you're following Jesus like Jesus commanded us, doesn't matter the Antichrist. The demons want us to think this way.
Focus on that.
Yeah, thinking about all the government, they're doing chemtrails, the Illuminati, doing this, poisoning you. Yeah, it's true. But follow Jesus. He'll keep you. He'll guide you.
Those are just facts. They're not truths.
Yeah, they're not truths. Facts versus truths. I like that a lot, Joe. Yeah. But that is just the main idea that, like, is in this world, so much crazy things going on, and civilizations have always been the same, no matter what they tell you. There's always been fear.
History repeats itself.
Yeah. There's always been fears of war, fear of famine, and disease and destruction and rumors, and it's always been the same. But what we need to do is just follow Christ.
Yeah. We've been in the end of days for a very long time.
Yeah.
right? And to focus on that's a
Absolutely.
very good, and that segues into what I was going to get into is because Catholics will talk about the apostolic succession. Sorry, can't talk today. The apostolic succession follows in the line of Peter. And then, so that's where they get their power from. The papacy gets their power from, because the keys have been given to him, and
Mm,
um, I don't think they quite understand the meaning of that,
mm,
giving the keys and the gates of hell and all of that type of stuff. That goes into a lot of the Nephilim type stuff and Mount Hermon and
mm,
all of that type of stuff. But what he was really saying was, upon this testimony,
mm,
that Peter, not by his own power, but by the power of God, recognized who
mm.
the Messiah was.
Wow.
And
Amen. Wow.
upon that rock was the church going to stand.
Wow. Can we just broadcast that to the whole world for everybody to
Yeah, we're
hear?
on YouTube and Facebook. We got it.
That's so well said, brother.
Upon
Yeah.
that rock, and the rock is the testimony
Amen.
that he is who he is,
Amen.
right? And that's his name. He is who he is, right?
Amen.
And that's where people miss it. Whether you're Protestant or Catholic, it's not going to try and refute all the Catholics, all the Mormons, all the. It's about proclaiming who he is. And I love apologetics. I love doing apologetics, but some people got it wrong, where they're going around telling people this one's wrong and that one's wrong. The Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong. Listen, proclaim the gospel, and the rest will take care of itself.
Amen. Yeah.
The rest is going to take care of itself. But you do need to know where they're coming from. And let's take, for example, two things. One is not many know that Martin Luther and John Calvin actually believed in the perpetual virginity of Mary. They actually were involved in Marian devotion. The conception is that Martin Luther and Calvin were like the first Protestants, and there were a lot of forerunners to Luther, and they were important figures. They started a movement, and people started movements after him. And where Protestantism really took foot is the Great Awakenings, the first, second, third, and fourth Great Awakenings. And so those were the revivals, the John Wesleys and all them that came after them. So a lot of the reformers, and that's why they call it the Reformation, because it's not the reformation of a whole new movement. That's where they get it wrong with Jesus and say, well, Jesus was making a new religion. He made it into Christianity, broke off with Judaism, and it was a whole new thing. He was fulfilling that.
Absolutely.
So what Luther and Calvin were trying to do was what they were saying, look, okay, sure, we believe that we have apostolic succession, but let's go back to what the Orthodox was trying to do. Let's go back to the original idea. There's a lot of corruption here. People are being oppressed. People are being abused. There's a whole lot of craziness going on here. Let's go back. And so a lot of the movements that came afterwards, they went all the way to the right, and they went, and Luther was all the way to the left. And it was, you have to strike a balance. You really have to, like you were saying, you can't get into all this nonsense, because with the date setting and the 7 years and the tribulation and all this type of stuff, you're taking your eyes off of Yeshua. And that's what Luther and Calvin were trying to do. They were trying to take their eyes off of the papacy and off of because what really led up to it was the Great Schism in the 10th century, and that's actually where priests were starting to become celibate. They actually, many don't know that many popes were actually married and had children.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They did before 1100. Many popes actually had wives. And the Great Schisms, a lot of the basically what happened was a lot of the ecumenical councils, they were debating about the heresies that were going on, Arianism, Pelagianism, all these different things. And over the centuries, up to like the 4th, 5th century, they were having all these councils talking about the doctrines and creating the creeds, the Nicene Creed. And so that's really what happened. And the schisms in the theology created power struggles when Constantine made it legal. So now Rome was, and I'm going to reference someone here. There's a video, Jim Papandrea. Jim Pependray is an Orthodox, and also Hank Hanegraaff. You can listen to him about these things. Just so you understand when you're talking to a Catholic or an Orthodox Christian, and some Christians don't even know that Orthodox Christianity exists because that's what happened. They were like the first Protestants. They split off from the Catholic Church. They were trying to hold it together. They were trying to say, hey, let's all come together and try to figure this thing out. And the Catholic Church was like, nope, we get the power now. Let's run with it. Let's go for it. And they'll say Peter was the first pope.
Yeah.
Real Catholic scholars don't really believe that. They believe it's an honorary title. They believe it's just sort of a figurative, symbolic thing, and that's how we see it. But they will apply it literally in a sense. But at the same time, they know historically the first pope was really a few men who were mentioned by Paul in the epistles. One was Linus, and one was Linus and Clement. So if you know, there's a school around here, St. Clement's, right? So that's actually the school that I went to, St. Clement's. St. Clement was the first pope, and some say it was Linus, but both are mentioned in the epistles. And so common sense would have you say, well, after Paul and Peter got martyred and James got martyred, someone had to take the authority. Someone had to take the authority. And that's exactly what happened. So people started taking the authority after them, but it was the theology, the confusion that created the schism and the power struggle. So that's really what happened. So basically, what I list here is, and I'm going to make this available to people after I write this out. So I would say that there's 5 points of divergence between Catholics and Protestants. One, and I'm going to list them in order what I think is most important from number 1 to number 5, most important to least important. Now, in Catholic theology, things like, it's all sort of on the same level. And just for a little bit of my testimony, and I don't know about you, but I came through Catholicism when I was growing up. And I was always interested. I thought, the Catholic Mass was very interesting. So I'm a little partial to it. I'm not adamant against it like many others are. I'm not saying that you need to agree. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I am saying that I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first is the papal infallibility. Okay, we just discussed that. Number 2 in that line is the priesthood. Okay, so you have absolution of sins. The priest will have the power to standing in almost for God to forgive sins. And even the Pharisees probably, if they were around today, they would say, well, who are you to forgive sins?
Yeah.
Because they did that with Yeshua, right? And following that, we also have the scandals and things like that. The Mass after that, because the priesthood is in charge of the Mass. So the next thing would be the centrality of the Mass, the Eucharist, and with comes with that is transubstantiation, which is that the Eucharist, the bread and the wine, literally become Jesus, right? The blood and the flesh. Next after that is, and if you could see it here, I actually have it.
I like that.
Icons.
It's so true.
Right, iconography, which they use now. Here's the divergence. So remember when I said that Muslims will say that we worship 3 gods, but it's not actually true. The way that a Catholic would see this as, no, we're using these things to connect with the realm of the saints that have ascended. So understanding where these things come from, we would say, well, it's not biblical. And what they would say is, well, our traditions come from biblical accounts. So they'll use the same scriptures, right? Just like all the cults do, they'll use the same scriptures as we do.
Oh, yeah.
But what happens is they will use extra biblical things, apocryphal writings. Now with Mary, because I'm going to get into the Mary thing. There's Mariolatry, the sainthoods, rosary, all these other things, these additions. Where this came from is theological problems. Now I'm going to stop at Mary for 1 second. Why is it, do you think, that Mary is so venerated? Just your opinion.
Well, I would say that people just naturally, in all throughout history kind of like to, for some reason, people like to pervert things and twist things
Yeah.
and take something that's true and kind of twist it.
Mhm.
Like when Moses went up to the mountain, they're like, oh, Moses is gone. Let's just make an idol and worship it again. Like people
Yeah.
just have this
Right.
tendency to just go the wrong
Right.
way. And with Mary, even in the Bible, we see that
Mhm.
before it happened officially, this woman came up to Jesus and she was like, your mother, she's, one
Mhm.
of a kind. And
Yeah.
Jesus was like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Only my brother and sister and mother are they who do the will of God.
Right. And it's
So,
right there.
yeah, it's right there,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
And so I think the center of this is people kind of don't listen to the
Mhm.
truth, and maybe they're not open divinely to have their eyes open and see. And people just kind of naturally go the wrong way.
Natural tendency.
Yeah.
It's the evil inclination of
Yeah.
wanting to get away
What
from
is it? Yetzirah?
Yetzirah, the evil inclination. They want to get away from is because the notion of sin and works and all that type,
Mhm.
it's almost an embarrassment
Mm.
to ourselves, and we need something to kind of comfort that.
Yeah.
We need a way to connect, and that's really what happened. So theologically, what happened with Mary, and this is how historically it happened. I'm not saying it's true one way or another, but there was an apocryphal writing called the Proto-Evangelion of James, and so there was almost like it came in like around 150, where a lot of the early church fathers were writing.
Mhm.
Some of the disciples of John, and here that's an interesting notion when you were talking about John and Peter. John was the last apostle, right? He was the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
living apostle. He wrote Revelation. So wouldn't you think naturally it would fall to John, who took care of Mary, right?
That's right.
John is the
'Cause
one that took care of
at the
Mary.
cross, that's what Jesus did. He said,
Yeah,
John, you take care of my mother from now on.
absolutely. And so it's sort of there's holes in this theology that we could talk about, but just to understand how this got to be. Um, Believers in the second century, they went to this thing called the Proto-Evangelion, and then what the story is they were trying to figure out how Jesus became incarnate in a perfect way, even though Mary was not perfect, right? Even though
Mm.
Mary was not sinless. So they
Mhm.
had to say that she was sinless in a way so that Jesus could be sinless.
Mm.
Because if Jesus came through an impure vessel,
Mm.
right? Now, we in Protestant theology would say, well, because she was perfect in obedience, right? Mary accepted the mission,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So through faith, she was perfect in that
And
sense.
I would even go as far to say that that's an example. That was why God came.
Mhm.
Uh, God's grace
Mhm.
came to show it's not this perfect, like that's something in the Catholic theology,
Mhm.
we don't want to, wail on it, but
Mhm.
that there's like this idea of like a hierarchy, like
Mhm.
priests and
Yeah,
saints and
right.
popes and Marys and
You're down
Joseph.
here,
Yeah, and there's
we're up here.
and really the true way is we're all the
Yeah,
same.
right.
There's not really
We're equal at
all
the
just
foot.
we're equal at the foot.
Yeah.
And what I think about that is I lost my train of thought. We were saying Mary.
Mhm. We
Uh,
were just basically saying that Mary, the reason why I got to that is because they were trying to fill in the blanks. They were trying to figure out the mystery of how Jesus, even though he was perfect and he was God, how he
oh,
remained
okay.
perfect even though he was
I
in
had a
yeah,
great idea, and you brought it
yeah.
back to me. That I had a revelation with my grandmother. We were reading
Mhm.
scripture, and in Isaiah, God says, "I am the first, and I
Mhm.
am the last."
Yep.
And in Revelation, Jesus says, "I am the first, and I am the last."
Mhm.
So it's not God says it here and Jesus says it here.
Yeah.
God is revealing Himself. He's revealing Himself from Isaiah to Revelation. God says to Isaiah, I'm the first, I'm the last.
Mhm.
Revelation, Jesus says, I'm the first and the last. So God is and Jesus are the same. And in God's grace, that's why He came to be in the nitty gritty and
Mhm.
be born of a regular person,
Right.
not of this saintly. And
Saintly
she
line.
did
Yeah.
obey God,
Right.
but not like she was this perfect woman, and that's why God selected her.
Right.
Of trillions of people, He selected her
Because she was special.
because she was special, or she
Yeah.
did. I think that she obeyed God, but I think that He came and wanted to say, listen, this is just, I'm coming to be amongst you. I'm the first, I am the last.
Yeah.
I'm God myself.
It begins and
becoming a
ends with
man.
him.
Begins and ends with Him.
So I mean, the thing that they were trying to do is they were trying to connect her family with the priesthood. They were trying to say that that Jesus had, because she remained a virgin because she was under a vow, okay, because her family was in the line to the priesthood. Her cousin Miriam, I think her cousin, I forget what her name was, but her husband was Zechariah, was a priest, and that is true. That is biblical. But what they do is they stretch that, and they're saying that it's not in the Bible per se, but they will say that she followed a vow of the priesthood, and Joseph was not really her real husband. Joseph was just taking care of her, and Joseph, her children, as mentioned in the Bible, were actually Joseph's children from a previous marriage, and so they'll justify it this way. Now, who knows? Maybe all that stuff is true. I really don't, historically, I don't know. But the Bible does say the theological implication is that, like what you were saying, the focus is on Jesus, not on Mary.
Yeah.
And so, whatever the truth is about that, even if it were true, even if all that stuff were true, that's not the focus. The focus is on, and that's our point to Catholics. We're saying, look, we don't venerate Mary, we honor Mary. We don't worship Mary, and I don't think honestly that they're going around thinking they're worshiping Mary. When you actually read the catechism, it puts her at a symbolic level, but they twist it so much that they make it sound like.
Yeah.
And that was the focus of one of the councils, because they were saying that the council was deciding whether or not to call Mary the mother of God or the mother of Christ. So they said, well, Nestorians, they call it, there was a group called the Nestorians. They said, we don't want to call her the mother of God. We want to call her the mother of Christ because it doesn't sound like we're worshiping her. And they went with mother of God only because they didn't want to divide God's humanity with his divinity. They wanted to say it's the hypostatic union. And that's why I played that song. It's the hypostatic union. We want to call her the mother of God because she did give birth to God. And it does boggle your mind when you think of that. But that's where that came from. And so just to understand, when you're discussing things with a Catholic, you have to understand it from their perspective in order to refute it.
Yeah.
So
I think talking to people, a crucial thing in talking to, well, no matter who they are, Catholic, Muslim, Jehovah's Witness, is just sincerely giving the person your ear.
Exactly.
And they can tell when you're listening and when you're not listening, and when you're just preparing to argue.
Right.
And when you really listen to someone, you open them up and you can have a real dialogue with them, and not just coming in ready to destroy someone's ideas.
Yeah, thinking.
And if you feel that your ideas are really true, you don't need to come in slugging. You can listen to them and let them talk and say whatever, and share your true idea, and the truth is going to always win.
Right. If it's true, the way that Jesus put that is, all things will come to light.
Yeah.
So if it's something that's false, it's going to be in the dark, and it's going to be evident eventually one day. Just like these scandals, right? They come to light eventually.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Whether it's Catholic or Jewish, because there's scandals in the Jewish world too. Those things eventually come to light, and we'll know one day. All these mysteries, we'll know.
Absolutely.
He'll reveal things. But I want to put on something here. I was listening to something called Catholic Answers, and just to give an idea of how they give a defense of their beliefs. So if you do a search on YouTube, Catholic Answers Protestant, you will come up with a radio show. You will come up with a radio show here. So I'm gonna, for the last few minutes here, we're gonna let them speak on something here. Just a couple of things to give you an idea of how they talk amongst themselves.
Six after the hour. This is Catholic Answers Live, the first hour, getting off to a good start with our guest, senior apologist and author Jimmy Akin. Let's go to Joe now in New Jersey, on one of our loyal podcasters. Hello, Joe.
Hi. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy
I
New
have
Year.
a question. is it okay to like go to a Protestant church and listen to a pastor preach?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's not intrinsically wrong. Now, you want to obviously make sure you're informed about your faith and that you're secure in your faith, so that you're not going to be, uh, confused. But you'll be able to think critically about what you're hearing and sort the good from the bad. So there are circumstances in which it's warranted to do that. Popes have even done that, and for ordinary individuals, there can be cases. I'm thinking particularly of situations where, for example, one of the spouses is Protestant, and for the sake of domestic peace, they attend both services. So that's a situation in which that could happen even on an ongoing basis. But it depends on your situation, and the basic parameters are how knowledgeable you are in your faith, how well you're able to exercise critical thinking, how secure you are in your faith, and so forth.
Oh, okay, yeah, I listen to Catholic Answers a lot, so
Uh-huh.
I get my knowledge from you guys.
Well, Joe, before you go, let me press that just one degree more, Jimmy. Would there be anything that would be a deal breaker, like a Westboro Baptist kind of?
Well, sure. I
Protestant
mean,
church.
I mean, now Westboro Baptists are not representative of the vast majority of Protestants. The vast majority of Protestants
To say
find
the least.
Westboro Baptists abhorrent. For those who may not be familiar with Westboro Baptist, it's a small church that is run principally by one family, and they show up at like the funerals of soldiers and say very hateful things. They also say hateful things in other circumstances, and they're a scandal even to other Protestants
And other Baptists,
and
in
other
fact.
Baptists. So so they're kind of an atypical case, but sure, yeah, there can be situations where you should not.
How's that, Joe?
Okay, yep, that's good.
All right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
So basically, the reason why I put that on is because when we talk amongst ourselves, other people are talking amongst themselves, and they're talking about how hateful certain groups are. They're talking about how the way that people talk about them is hateful, and we don't want to be that. What we want to do is, when Yeshua told us, take the speck out of your own eye. I'm not saying that we don't correct people. I'm not saying that we don't get the right theology. But what I am saying is, you take the speck out of your own eye first, because what they're going to do is they're going to say, aha.
Yes.
So you with that, you have a cross in your pulpit. Aha.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you
That's what they were looking for Jesus. They
Uh-huh.
wanted to find everything they could find.
Find something wrong.
Same thing Jesus said. Jesus was like, guys, they did this to me. You think they're not going to do it to you?
Yeah.
They're people who are against the cross of Christ are going to try to find things that are wrong with you to say, look, the cross of Christ, Jesus Christ, his work, his resurrection, it's not real, or it hasn't worked, or it's not legitimate in some way. And for us, we need to do the opposite. We need to be like Jesus, give people the benefit of I think it's important not to bottleneck whole groups of people.
Yeah.
Like we hear these people doing to us.
Right.
Which I just did right now. These people.
It's tough. It's not easy.
But they're saying, oh, these Protestants, they're hateful. They're this and that. We shouldn't do that, because there's a lot of people who claim to be a born again Christian, and they're not really born again. And then there's people who are Catholic who would die for Jesus, for the love of Christ.
Oh yeah, we had a Catholic lady on our we were doing a street team in Central Square, and we had a Catholic lady tell her testimony. She was a very faithful woman.
Wow. Yeah.
She told her story. I wanted to give a few minutes to that, but perhaps we'll get to that next week. But she was a very faithful woman, and she had a few things that were sort of mystical that she was talking about.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't think Yeshua the Father is looking down saying, you got this one thing wrong with your theology, and everything else is crap.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think he's looking at it like that. I mean, he exhorts us to get it right.
Absolutely.
But none of us is going to get it 100%. None of us.
No.
On our last dying day, we're not gonna Are you serious? Like you're concerned about getting your theology 100%? I'm not gonna make it because I got
Yeah.
this one thing wrong. I didn't
Yeah.
understand this Hebrew word
Yeah.
or this
Exactly.
Greek word, or that's he's not looking at that. He's looking at what you do understand. That's what you're responsible for.
Mhm.
You're not responsible for what you don't understand. You're responsible for what you do understand. And you're responsible to follow. If you have an idea of what you should do, just like James said, if you know what to do and you don't do it, that is sin. But you're not responsible for for understanding every little thing, for every little
Absolutely.
detail of theology. Nobody has an idea.
And God looks at the heart, not it's like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
Like God gave us the whole Torah, which I mean is it's a guide stone to keep, and He gave it to us. And but the spirit of the law is only two things: to
Yeah.
love the Lord your God
Right.
with all your heart and soul and mind and
And
everything.
the rest are fulfilled in those.
And
Yeah.
and your neighbor as yourself. It's all fulfilled.
Yeah.
So there's the spirit of the law, which is just the true essence of it versus keeping it and knowing all the little
Right,
details.
right.
God is not worried about that.
Yeah.
God is worried about the
And he'll help you figure that stuff out.
absolutely.
Because it is a daily walk, and it's the rest of the laws are concerned with how to do it. It's really not so much of adding this upon this upon this. It's
Mhm.
more of we have these two things that we have to do. We have to please God and we have to serve other men, right?
Mhm.
But how? How do we do that? And that's where the Holy Spirit takes over
Yeah.
and leads you and says, okay, I'm going to show you how. That's why we have his word, and he's going to show us how. So I'm going to play a song here, and this is the Hebrew version, both in English and Hebrew, of "How Great Is Our God," called "Gadol Elochai," Joshua Aaron, and it was filmed. This particular video was filmed in Jerusalem. So it's got the same familiar feel to it, but you'll know the difference.
Gadol Elohai Shiru ki gadol Elohai Kol echad yileh ki gadol Elohai. Shem Ya'akov Shem Otcha ra'ui leharem Libi yashir ki gadol Elohai. Shem Ya'akov Shem Otcha ra'ui leharem Libi yashir ki gadol Elohai. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Gadol Elohai, Shiru ki gadol Elohai, Kol echad yileh ki gadol Elohai.
אלוהי, שירו כי גדול, אלוהי, כל אחד יראה, כי גדול, גדול אלוהי, גדול אלוהי, שירו כי גדול, אלוהי, כל אחד יראה, כי גדול אלוהי, גדול אלוהי, כמה גדול,
So we have a surprise guest. All right, man. So this is Michael Wright. If anyone has been watching, you will remember him from the very first episode from Be Ready Street Ministries, and we were just talking about. You can talk about what you want, but we were talking about that Catholic woman that was. If you were listening, we were talking about that Catholic woman.
Yeah.
What was your feel like? I mean, she wasn't 100% with theology. She had a few mystical things that she was talking about, but overall, you saw that her heart was in the right direction.
Yes, it was. She had a very good testimony.
Yep.
How she went to now this lady is 70 years old now. She had a walker.
Yeah.
She came up and grabbed the mic and she just told us her testimony, and it was a good testimony. I didn't know she was a Catholic until she said Catholic. But it's pretty interesting. It's amazing how people, for me as a street ministry, I don't mind anybody coming up and grab the mic and saying some kind of testimony,
Right.
how God brought them to where they, where they
Mhm.
are right now. I don't care if you're Catholic or JW or Mormon,
Mhm.
even though we don't agree with a few things
Right.
what they believe, but everybody has a testimony.
Exactly.
But she was pretty interested. I mean, she talked about her daughters. Her daughter was sick, and she said a little bit about LGBTQ and back then.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
back then. So
Right.
imagine.
How long ago was that? Like 10 years ago or something, like she was saying?
I don't know.
Before all this.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But she came out in the cold weather.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to give her, she stood there for like good 10 minutes.
Yeah. And I did put it on Facebook, but just parts of it, not only like 3 or 4 minutes of it. But it's pretty interesting.
It was powerful. We get all sorts of people, and like you said, we don't care. God does works in people's hearts, and it's as long as they're not blaspheming.
Yeah.
As long as they're not outright blaspheming and yelling and screaming and being disrespectful. We were talking about someone. I think he identified with Jehovah's Witness theology a little bit more than anything. He said he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, but he was saying that he sort of identifies with them.
Mhm.
And we were having a conversation with him, and what we try to do is we try to meet people where they are, right?
Yep.
And we say, okay, look, we can pray with you, and we can get it from there, and let's hope and pray that God does something in your heart, and if you're wrong about something, God's going to let you know.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what we're all about, to bring people to Christ.
Yeah.
Not to anything else but to Jesus
Right.
Christ.
Yes.
I believe in prayer. Prayer changes things. That's why I'm here, and that's why I am the way I am. It's because of Jesus.
Let him do the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
All you could do is just plant the seed,
Right.
not throw the seed,
Yep.
or just plant it and watch it grow, and let God do the increase.
Amen.
As we do our work as laborers. The Bible says laborers are few.
Yeah.
The harvest is plenty.
So we got to do double time.
Yeah, and it's cold outside, so
Yeah.
we can't do a lot. But people got, and plus work schedules and stuff.
Yep.
But I wish I could be out there every day, but I
Yeah.
just can't.
We
just
got to
can't
take
do
care
it.
of ourselves too. We got to do what we got to do for our families as well. But I mean, the whole thing is God sees our heart. God sees what we're
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
You know, He doesn't expect us to save the world. He's already done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He already did that 2,000 years ago. There's nothing really more that we can do than what He already did on the cross.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
2019, we're gonna make some changes, for the better, not for the worse.
Yeah.
I believe we're gonna try to feed the homeless,
Yep.
which we didn't do last year.
Give some clothes
We're
out.
gonna get some clothes out. We're gonna try to witness more, to get people baptized, and just try to engage with people more and more, because I believe that's what God's calling us to do in 2019.
Yep.
I started this ministry
Yeah.
with a speaker and a microphone, and
That's
look what
right.
God gave me. He gave me Yosef, and I met Jake, and and everybody, man. It's just
Yeah.
God is just amazing, and I believe that it's gonna increase.
It's a diverse cast. We have
Yes.
so many people who can do so many different things and preach in so many different ways
Yeah.
and reach out in so many different ways.
Yeah.
We all have a unique way of doing it, and God's going to use each and every one of us. And I see church growth or ministry growth not as size. I see it as quality. It's quality, not quantity. Because we have a bunch of fools that are just doing a bunch of nonsense,
Oh, yeah.
preaching a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
What good is that?
Yeah.
But if you have a good core of people that are committed and who's
faithful,
faithful.
God's looking for some faithful people from His disciples. His disciples was faithful.
Yes.
But God's looking for some faithful people to come out, and God gave me faithful people. I could call Yusef and say, Yusef, I'm going to Central Square. All right, I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. And I don't have to pull no teeth. I don't have to, beg them or nothing,
Yeah.
And they just say, okay, I'll meet you at the spot.
Amen.
And that's what I like, and that's what God likes too.
That's right. I mean, we all have the passion, we all have the vision. Yeah. And that's really what pushes you forward is knowing more than it's not about glorifying the ministry. It's about glorifying the Lord, and it's about serving the people He cares about. There's people out there that need our help. There's people out there that, and sometimes, honestly, I don't feel like going. Sometimes it's like, I just want to sit. I want to sit around. I want to, and then I go, you know what? You don't know what's going to happen out there, right?
Yeah.
You just don't know.
I feel the same way.
Right? But you push yourself to do it because you know that's what He's asked us to do.
It's a calling, man.
Yep. But thank you for coming, Michael.
Yeah.
And
I was literally right up the street.
and you were watching and you were listening.
I was watching. I was like 3 minutes away, and I was trying to get here at 5 o'clock, but I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. But thank you all for listening, and you guys have a great week, and we'll be back and we'll continue this discussion a little more in-depthly next week. Have a great day.
Radio is a member-run station located in Union Square, Somerville.
Awesome.
Your voice, your music, your station. To learn how you can host your own radio show, contact manager at boston3radio.com.
You want free speech? I got your free speech right here. It's all about free speech, baby. bostonfreeradio.com.
Greetings, Earthlings. This is Funkatron 5000, the intergalactic space